Where are your shoes? Where's your jumper? Where's your lunchbox? Where's the dog?
So welcome to A Cup of Tea with Bree, where I get to meet some amazing parents, some of the country's most amazing business people and inspiring characters as well. So for today, I have the absolute pleasure of sharing a cup of tea with a man who's made creating happy families a career. He's a father of 6 daughters. He's a psychologist, author of 4 books, which have sold more than 40,000 copies. He's been featured on Today, The Morning Show, and Studio 10, to name a few. So I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Justin Coulson today. How are you, Justin?
Hi, Bree. It's really nice to be with you.
It's nice to have a cup of tea with you. What sort of tea are you drinking today?
Well, I actually don't drink anything brown. So I'm just, I'm on water. Water is the ultimate ergogenic aid, and I feel comfortable sharing that cuppa with you anyway.
Not brown water, good to know.
No, definitely not brown water. Absolutely not.
So let's get to the beginning of life for you. So tell me about your childhood. Where were you born and what was your family home and upbringing like?
Sure. I was born to a couple of Westies. Mum and Dad were born and raised me in Lidcombe and Auburn in the western suburbs of Sydney back in the 70s. Auburn looked culturally very different then to how it looks today. But within a couple of years of my birth, we headed off to the central coast of New South Wales, and I was raised there. I grew up by the beach out at Wamberal Beach at the northern end of Terrigal. Many people will be familiar with it.
Yes.
Raised, the surfer kid, just loved being at the beach. That was kind of my life. And I'm the oldest of 6 kids myself. So there was me, then twin girls. And after my twin sisters, I had a little brother and then another set of twin girls. So Mum and Dad have got 2 sets of twin girls in the family and 2 boys as well.
Wow. So I guess you've come from a large family. Most people from a large family don't often have a large family after that because but it's so great to see that you've kept the tradition up, but you didn't have any twins.
Well, I kind of didn't have much say in it, really. We couldn't choose to have twins or not. We wanted to have twins, but once we had our first, we were like, thank goodness we only had one. But my wife and I, when we got married, I was like, yeah, let's have 2 kids, maybe 3, at a stretch 4. And Kylie said, I really want to have 6. And so we compromised and we had the 6. It was just, it's the way we work in our family.
Good. So you did one, no more?
Oh, everyone always asks that. I mean, I never say never, but I'll tell you what, I don't imagine that I could be any tired, or I think I might die if I get any more tired.
You did get a couple of puppies.
Kids,
couple of puppies.
Well, we have to, for goodness sakes. They're killing me. We dog poop everywhere. Gosh.
And they don't sleep. It's just like having again.
Well, my eldest daughter is now 18. She's at university, and she came to us the other day and said, I want to get a puppy. And we said, no, just absolutely not. And she kind of said, well, I'm 18 and it's my money. And I said, but it's my house. And she said, well, I'll look after it and I won't do anything to your house. And I said, I don't want you to get a puppy. And clearly the parenting expert has no control over his own children, because she's actually turning 19 in a few weeks. My 19-year-old daughter just went, I'm buying one anyway. So we have a puppy in the house.
Oh, so you've only got one puppy.
Just the one puppy. Yeah. And you know what? I just said to her, that's fine. But if you come home one day and it hasn't been doing the right thing and it's gone, you'll understand. No, I didn't. I'm looking at your face. You're like, what? No, we love this little puppy dog. It's gorgeous. And we always wanted to get another pup for the dog that we've got to have a playmate. And we love having the extension to our family with fur babies.
Fur babies, yes.
Yeah.
So what did you want to be, Justin, when you grew up? Did you ever envisage doing this?
Yeah. When I was 8, I remember hearing my dad have a conversation with somebody, and they were talking about horses. And then this guy started talking about his brother who was a bookmaker. And I interrupted and I said, I've always wanted to be a bookmaker as well. And my dad looked at me. I mean, we come from a non-gambling family, right? And Dad's looked at me with this, what did you just say? And I said, yeah, I've always wanted to be a bookmaker. And Dad says, what do you understand a bookmaker to be? I said, well, it's somebody who makes books, somebody who writes books. I want to be an author, a writer. And of course, that's what I.
Goodness.
Yeah, that's right. But that's what I do now. Now, in the interim, I actually decided I wanted to be a radio announcer, and so I actually left school and spent the best part of a decade in the radio industry. I ended up at one of the biggest radio stations in the country, or at least it was back then, at Brisbane's B105, where we played all of today's best music while you work. So I worked as a radio
at the radio
DJ.
station at the Gold Coast.
Is that right?
CFM, 90.9 CFM. Yeah.
90.9 CFM. Well, I used to work in those studios at Gold, their
Gold
competitor, Gold
FM.
92.5. Yeah.
We might have been like working in the same building at one point.
I just filled in for a guy called Kieran Atkinson while he was on
Yeah,
holidays
I know
one
Kieran.
time. You know Kieran?
Yeah, I know Kieran.
He was on holidays. I filled in for 4 weeks while he was away, and that was at the end of my career as a radio announcer. Actually, I just left B105, and I was trying to determine whether to start all over again in radio or start something brand new. And that 4 weeks at Gold FM was enough to convince me that I never wanted to do radio again. And it wasn't about Gold FM. It was about me. I needed to move on. I need to be really clear about that. I've said a couple of things in this podcast that make me sound a little bit snarky. I'm not. I promise.
You're not snarky.
I'm having fun.
I'm
having fun. Yeah, it is. So basically, I decided to go back to school. I left radio and went back to school after this 10-year career.
So what made you decide to get into psychology then?
Well, while I was a radio announcer, we had our first 2 kids, a 3-nager and a newborn. And if you've had a 3-nager before, you know what they're like, right? I mean, they're teenagers, but little. They're out of control. They scream and shout. And I was kind of your typical dad who I used to think that when I had my kids, they'd do as they were told. I know. Well, by the time I had a 3-year-old, that's right. I realized pretty soon with this 3-year-old that I was so out of my depth it was ridiculous. I had no idea, and I had a particularly bad incident one day. I won't go into the detail. I'm ashamed of it. It was a horrible incident where I treated her very badly. I yelled and screamed and was just and I hurt her physically because I was so angry at her because she wouldn't do as she was told. Ironically, she wouldn't go to sleep. And I don't know where we get this crazy idea as parents that if we yell at our kids, that's going to tire them out more. That's, the more we yell at them and get cranky at them, the more likely it is that they're going to stay in bed and go to sleep. It's foolishness. But, when you're a young dad and you don't have any answers, you just sort of rely on your power.
Yes. And
after that episode.
And things like that as well.
Sure. Yeah, that's right. And we're not at our best in those circumstances. That doesn't excuse my inappropriate anger and aggression towards my daughter. But I had a chat with my wife, Kylie, afterwards. She'd been out when this had occurred. And I very meekly and humbly explained what I had done and how awful I felt for having made such an awful parenting choice. And we discussed that at some length, and I chose in that instant to leave my radio career and go back to school so that I could study psychology so that I could learn how to dad. Now, of course, anyone who's done a psychology degree knows that in 4 years of undergraduate psychology, you don't actually learn anything about parenting. They teach you about some developmental psychology, but they don't teach you any parenting. And so then I went and did a further 3.5 years to full-time study and earned a PhD in psychology, where my focus was going as deep as I could into the parenting science. And throughout that process, we had children number 3, 4, and 5 while I was a student, paying off the mortgage, and our family was different as a result of the things that I'd learned. And I worked as an academic for a short while, about 18 months, maybe 2 years after my PhD. But I found that I just had this knowledge inside me that I had to share with people. I just wanted to get it out. And when I was at the university, I was consistently being nominated for awards as, best tutor, best lecturer, all that sort of thing. And I just loved the lecturing side of things. I thought, well, maybe I should write books and talk to people. And so I quit the university and started writing books and talking to people. And, 6 years later, we've had our 6th child, obviously. And now I travel the country and give talks and help people in their relationships.
Because you have started the Happy Families movement, for better words, and is that through your research and through your, your own life that you realise that it is hard for families in this day and age to keep that? We all want to be happy, right? So, is that why you started the Happy Families movement?
Yeah, it is. Although I've got to confess, if we want our families to be happy, if that's our ultimate goal, we're ultimately going to be disappointed. because happiness is something that we don't always have. You know, it comes and it goes, and the more we chase it, the more elusive it is. What we need to do instead is find ways to really engage in our lives, and as we do that, as we become really intentional about the decisions that we're making, we'll find that happiness will spontaneously appear as a byproduct of us living intentionally and purposefully. And so my focus very much is helping families to create that kind of an environment where they and their children feel safe and feel loved and feel like they're living on purpose.
Beautiful. So, you know, you have 6 children, so I can only imagine the juggling act, and 1 puppy. So I can only imagine the juggling act that you have to perform with your busy schedule. You know, so how do you manage, I guess, being a father of 6 and having a career that takes you all over Australia?
Look, for the most part, we're a mess. You know, I'm kind of joking, but kind of not. It's just super hard. Anyone that's got a bunch of kids and a busy lifestyle and lots of demands knows exactly what I'm talking about. We don't usually laugh about it and say, yes, we're a bit we're a bit of a mess, but it's really, really intense. We do a handful of things that help us. We get our mornings right. It's incredible what having the right kind of routine in the morning does for setting you up for success throughout your day. So we won't go into all the detail now. We just don't have time for it. But if you Google my name and New York Times, a couple of months ago, I had an article that appeared in the New York Times, which I was very proud about, very excited. New York Times is kind of a big deal. And it's called Making Mornings Magic. So if you just Google Justin Coulson, New York Times mornings, that article will come up. And essentially, there's a handful of things that we do to make our mornings work well. The first thing we do is we recognize that the morning begins the night before, which means the night before, we want to make sure that everybody knows where their uniform is. Everyone knows where their school shoes are. Everybody knows where their school jumper is, because otherwise, you know, you lose 3 of them every winter. We want to make sure that everybody has unpacked their lunchbox. The lunchbox has been cleaned and it's ready for the next morning. And we actually pull out a handful of things and get them ready for lunch the next day, just to make the morning that much easier. And of course, everyone's got to go to bed on time. In the morning, our kids have got 2 checklists that they follow. They've got a menu checklist. So they've actually identified the night before what they're going to have for breakfast the next morning, which means that when they stumble into the kitchen, you know, brain dead and exhausted, I don't want to be awake, they don't have to think about what to have for breakfast. They decided that last night, and they look at their menu and they just pull stuff out of the fridge or the cupboard and they're right to go. And it's the same with lunch. They prepare their own lunch because they've thought about it the night before, and they don't have to think about it now. They just have to follow the process. And the other checklist that they have is just a checklist on the wall that says, you know, have you brushed your teeth, gotten into your uniform? You know, and it's all in the right order, of course. Had your breakfast, blah, blah, blah. And so Kylie and I are able to have somewhat more relaxing mornings with the kids, where we offer our support rather than chasing them and saying, where are your shoes? Where's your jumper? Where's your lunchbox? Where's the dog? You know, we get to, that's right. You tell me you brushed your teeth, but I can smell your breath from the other side of the room. You haven't.
You did the test 6 times before they ever walked out the door.
Yeah, that's right. Just breathe across my nose gently. And so by doing that, we make our mornings magic. The kids know what to do. We get them up on time. We get them up gently and kindly, and a little bit earlier than they need to be up, so that there's no rush. Some of the other things that we do are we create traditions, like having 1 night a week where I'm guaranteed to be home and where there's guaranteed to be time together as a family. You know, no devices. It's just us. We have a day that we call Super Saturday. Every Saturday we have a couple of hours of no cost or low cost family fun. And that might be going to the beach or going to the park or going for a bike ride or climbing a mountain or hanging out in the dining room and playing board games or putting a puzzle together. It doesn't really matter what it is, but it's absolutely committed family time for a couple of hours before Saturday sport happens, or in between sporting activities, or whatever it is. But that's Super Saturday. And you know, I was sharing that idea, and I had a Kiwi fella in an audience come up to me afterwards. He said, I love your idea about Super Saturday, bro. He said, but we don't do Saturdays because I've got to work and the kids have got sport. He said, what we do is we do Chop Tuesday. And I said, you do what? He said, Chop Tuesday. I said, what's Chop Tuesday? And he said, well, we go and buy chips and we sit in the park and we have chip sandwiches every Tuesday night. That's our family thing. I thought, it's so simple to do this kind of thing. When we establish the tradition, we create the routine, and their family loves Chop Tuesday because they get to sit in the park and have, bread, white bread and chips and tomato sauce. It's terrible for them. I mean, it's awful for their
But it's memories,
bodies.
right? Yeah, you remember that.
And it might, and it's good for them as a family.
Yeah.
And I reckon if you're going to do that once a week, I reckon your body will handle it. It's okay.
Yes. My dad used to do pickled pork every week. I can't even look at pickled pork anymore.
That's terrible.
Oh.
What sort of a father was he? Gosh, what was he thinking?
Well, the problem was it was, one night it turned into 4, or you'd eat it for 4 days. So I think that's
right.
why.
It just lasted forever. Yeah. No one wanted it on night one.
Yeah, exactly. So your website is happyfamilies.com.au. So what makes a happy family in your eyes?
Well, I could give you a really big list, but no one will remember a big list, and no one will be able to do what's on the big list. So I have a book that's called 21 Days to a Happier Family. And in 21 Days to a Happier Family, what I've identified really is that there's 3 things that we need. And if we can get these 3 things in our family consistently, our family is going to be happy most of the time. They each start with L, so they're easy to remember. They're love, limits, and laughter. Happy families are big on love. They find ways to show kindness, compassion, understanding, gentleness, and love to one another in whatever way they do that. But they make sure that everybody feels love. Everybody has time. Everybody has understanding. Everybody has the attention that they need. And when they don't have the capacity to do that, they find other creative ways to make sure people are still being attended to and responded to in loving and meaningful ways. Limits is the tricky one. Limits is where we say to our kids, we love you, but there's still appropriate ways to behave and inappropriate ways to behave. And we're going to put some moral values around this. We're going to teach you what we believe is right and what we believe is wrong. And we're going to ask you to live up to that. And so we teach limits effectively by remembering the 3 E's: explain, explore, empower. We explain to our children what our expectations are. We explore the world through their eyes and see their perspective. And then we empower them to come up with decisions that we can all feel good about together. It's a real art to setting effective limits, but that's the second L. We've got love, we've got limits, and then we've got laughter. In terms of what really makes our families happy, we've just got to have fun together. We've got to laugh together. Turn up the music and sing at the top of your voice, even if you're an awful singer. Dance in the kitchen. My kids love that song by Steve Curtis Chapman called Cinderella. I'll dance with Cinderella while she's here in my arms, because all too soon the clock will strike midnight and she'll be gone. I'm going to start crying. Because, it's just this song about little girls growing up and leaving dad, leaving home as they, they're little, and then they're going off and making their way in the world. Create these traditions where you've got your favorite songs that you dance to in the kitchen. Kyle and I dance in front of the kids all the time. Can I have this dance for the rest of my life? It's so cheesy, but the kids love seeing mum and dad dance in the kitchen to a corny love song. It's that kind of stuff. Find the funny in challenging moments. Instead of clenching your teeth and turning into a ball of rage and stress, laugh about stuff. A friend of mine, Wally, was driving with his learner driver daughter. They were heading towards a left-hand bend. She was going too fast. And Bree, if you're going to turn left and you're going too fast for that left-hander, you're going to go across the other side of the road. And that's exactly what Emily did. She went across 2 lanes of oncoming traffic. Fortunately, nobody hit her, and she mounted the curb on the other side of the road, finally found the brake, slammed the brake on, the car skidded and stopped as the front bumper kissed the petrol station sign. No damage to the car, no damage to the petrol station sign. And Dad, Wally, he looks at Emily, and then he looks in the back seat and checks on his wife and 2 other kids that are sitting in the back while all this is going on. And he sees that everyone's okay. And he simply says, well, while we're here, does anyone need to use the bathroom? Which is such a wonderful way to diffuse such a tense moment, right? He's used humor in a really soft, gentle way. He recognized, and he actually described it. He said, I knew in that moment that I didn't need to discipline my daughter. She'd already learned the lesson.
Oh, yeah.
Which is wonderfully wise, because how many parents would be like, what were you thinking? And, go off at them. But instead he said, I recognized she'd learned the lesson and I just needed to make everyone feel good. And so when he just asked if they needed to use the bathroom because we're already stopped and we're at the petrol station, So can we find ways to invite humor into our families and into our lives? If we can do that and combine it with love and limits, we're going to have a much happier family.
I love it. So if you could have dinner, Justin, with 3 people, whether past or present, who would they be and why?
Well, I love to learn. I'm one of those insatiable learners. And so I'd probably pick the 3 of the most influential people in the history of the world. I think that I would probably pick somebody I would pick Jesus. Not for any, look, I have a faith background, but not because of, a deep faith thing, but rather in the history of the world between Jesus and Muhammad, I think that kind of accounts for the most influential people in the history of the world, pretty much. Yeah. So they would be 2 people that I would love to sit and be like, okay, teach me.
Yes.
I'm ready to listen. That would be amazing. And the third one would be my wife.
Oh.
so I just and you know what, I don't know if I'm mindful that when some people hear that, they're like, oh, they may make some judgments about that, but I stress my focus is on learning. My focus is on being the best person that I can be, so that I can help other people to be the best people that they can be. And so I would be choosing people who can help me to be better, religious, faith or otherwise. This is about how do we leave the biggest mark on the world? How can I help more families? How can I help my own family? How can I improve myself as an individual? And so that's kind of my justification for the people that I would choose.
I love it. I think it's beautiful. So let's leave it on the last question, which is going to be, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
This is such a hard question. But I think that I would probably say that the best piece of advice I've ever been given is that kindness is the greatest wisdom there is. Jean-Jacques Rousseau said, what greater wisdom is there than kindness? And when I think about the most wonderful people that I know, the people who are most influential in my life, the people who I go to and say, I am struggling with something, they're people who are deeply kind. They're the people who, when they see you, their eyes light up and they say, it's so great to see you. They're the people who listen, the people who are respectful, the people who have an innate goodness that opens them up, or opens us up to them. So for me, the greatest wisdom, the greatest advice that I've ever been given is be kind. It's the only thing that matters. In fact, if you can't be kind, then be kind. And if you can't be kind, then be kind. Just be kind. Love them, no matter who they are, no matter what they've done. If we can find a way to love them, I think that it's the character trait of the noblest humans that I know, and it's something that I wish that I had more of. I'd love to be far more kind, far more compassionate, far more generous and patient, and kind.
I'm sure it's something we all need to work on every single day. I love it. Thank you so much for letting us get to know you a little bit more. It's really wonderful to have a cup of tea with you today and get to know you. So thank you so much.
Really nice to be with you. Thanks, Bree.
Take care.